Welcome to episode 367 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Eli Daughdrill, who just did an indie drama feature called Faith. He comes on the show to talk about his career and how he got into the film business. It's a personal story to him, and we talk a bit about where this idea came from and why he put it into a screenplay and eventually a full feature film. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 367. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. We are still plugging away on the rideshare killer. We're basically done with the trailer. There's a couple more edits that he is working on, but I should be releasing that in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for the trailer for the rideshare killer. We have 6 effect shots we're working on, and we have only 2 of those left to do. Those were sent in this week, so 4 of those were completed, sent in this week. So slowly but surely this is coming together, and just hoping to have this thing done here in a month or two. I did release our annual The Budget List, which is the best low-budget screenplays that came through SYS over the last year. This year I pulled scripts that had gotten favorable reviews. Mostly I found these scripts from my analysts, the SYS script analysis service. Obviously, we read a lot of scripts over the course of the year, so I look through that list, and then I include the ones that obviously are allowed to be low budget, but I include the ones, the best scripts, the low budget that kind of come through the system. But I do sometimes find, I don't think this year I found any outside of that, but I do sometimes find scripts outside of that as well. And this year I did include the quarterfinalists from our annual contest. So basically all the quarterfinalists and up, they were also included in the budget list. You can find that on the site. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com and then just look in the sidebar and you'll see a link so you can download the full PDF. And of course, last week we did launch our contest, SYS's 6-figure screenplay contest. It's open for submissions now. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. The early bird deadline is March 31st. After that, it goes up by $10. So if your script is ready, definitely submit early. Last year's winning screenplay friend request was actually officially optioned last week, so they're hoping to shoot it this summer. That's incredibly exciting. It's actually a producer, and I think he's also planning on directing it. And he was one of our industry judges, found the script, read it, liked it, took it to his contacts. I'm hoping once this thing gets a little more progressed, I'm hoping to have both the writer and the producer on the podcast. Obviously, things can still go south. I mean, there's a lot of variables coming up, but there was an official option, and they're planning on shooting this summer. Again, things can still go wrong, but I think we're looking pretty good to get our winning script actually produced. And I think that's fantastic. I really think that's the whole purpose of this contest, is to try and help writers get their stuff optioned and ultimately produced. So needless to say, too, I've been promoting this success to the producers that I talk with as well. So there's a lot more interest this year from the producers, as it seems like our contest has been able to at least find one good script that may go into production. So these producers are now getting a little more interest, and I can tell just from talking to them, more of them want to talk on the phone, more of them, or say, hey, give me a call, and what's the contest all about? How does it work? So definitely getting a lot more interest. I think this year I'm up to about 50 industry judges. I think last year I had maybe 30 or 40. So getting more and more industry judges, involved is a good thing really for all the writers. Because again, it will just give us more access, more potential to find the right producer for the right script. And so much of this too is really about that. I think all the quarterfinalist scripts that I found were pretty good scripts. Certainly the semifinalist scripts, I think, were all scripts that could be produced produced, and certainly, obviously, the finalists and the winner, I believe in strongly. But again, it's really not just a matter of having a good script. It's a matter of having that good script and matching it to the producer. And in the case of Friend Request, it seems like we might have been able to do that. So, anyways, I'll definitely keep everybody abreast as that goes on. And as I said, I'm hoping once this thing actually gets to the point where it's going to go into production, I'm going to bring both the writer and the producer on to the podcast so they can kind of talk about what they're looking for, what they had as an experience, and how it all went down. So, again, keep an eye out for more announcements coming up. But I'm very excited about this, and I think it's a great thing, not just for selling your screenplay, but potentially for all the people that do enter this contest. Once again, if you want to find out more about the contest, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. So that's the main thing I've been working on over the last couple of weeks, just getting the Rideshare Killer finished and obviously launching the contest. So now let's get into the main segment. Today, I am interviewing writer-director Eli Daughdrill. Here is the interview. Welcome, Eli, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks, Ashley, for having me on.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
So I grew up in a small town in the center of California on a farm, actually. And I guess I became interested in the movies because I didn't have a social life as a teenager, and I watched a lot of films. And so that sort of sparked my interest. And as I sort of thought about what I wanted to go out and study when I went to college, that was the sort of thing that's like, this is what I'm most interested in. And so I'd like to spend 4 years actually in classes with stuff that I'm curious about rather than fulfilling some obligation, something that I think I'm supposed to do rather than something I want to do.
Yeah, sure. So then what were those steps? What film school did you end up going to?
So I started out actually at community college, and then I went to San Francisco State for my undergrad. I got a really good education there. And then from there, I actually went to Loyola Marymount for grad school.
Okay. And what was your degrees in?
So my undergrad degrees in what they called cinema up there, and film production is my degree in from my master's degree from LMU.
Gotcha. And what is it, do you think, attracted you to the entertainment industry? Like, why did you love movies, and why did you want to turn this into an actual career as opposed to just a passing hobby?
Boy, that's a really good question. What is it? Whatever it is about movies and their ability to get you to the way they can make you feel, I guess, whatever it is. When it's really well done, whether it's they make you laugh or they scare you or they make you feel emotional in some way, that was always sort of profound to me, I guess. Even as a kid, like I was, television, movies. And I mean, I grew up in a religious household, which I guess we'll probably get into because of the movie. And so there were certain restrictions on the things that we could watch. But even those things that maybe the kind of stuff that we could watch that was maybe a little more tame, that still could affect me in certain ways. And so there's just an attraction to the form and the what it can do to an audience, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed on your IMDb page, you've written and directed a number of short films. First off, how did you get those projects funded? And how did they prepare you for feature films?
So how I got those projects funded, mostly they're self-funded, or in some cases I had grant money. So the way I make my living is actually I'm a professor at a community college, and so that there was certain programs that they had going, they don't have them anymore, that I was able to use to help partially fund some of those movies. And then stuff that I did in grad school, just coming out of grad school, like I did a documentary just coming out of grad school, but that's self-funded. And I mean, none of these things are expensive. I'm not spending a ton of money on them or anything, and that's the way I can self-fund them. But yeah, I mean, I remember when I was actually in undergrad, I made a couple of shorts when I was in undergrad, and I was talking to one of my peers about it, and he was getting ready. This is up in San Francisco, and he was getting ready to move down here, and he said something about like, well, I'm not making any more shorts because I feel like I've done that, and I'm going to graduate to features. He was going to come down here and do features, and well, yeah, that's what I should be doing. That's what we've done enough of this. We should make features. And then I went to grad school and I made a couple shorts, and then I made a documentary that's sort of a short feature. And then I was trying to get Faith made. And one of the things that happens is when you're trying to make a feature and it's sort of outside what you can, fund, it's more expensive than the amount of money that you could afford to go into debt for, I guess. You're not making anything. There was this like, oh, here I am. I'm not doing anything. I was teaching, but not making anything anymore. And I found this opportunity to start doing some shorts. And it was sort of reinvigorating because now all of a sudden I'm doing the thing again that I love, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And you're learning. There's a sort of rediscovery of the process, and I felt less like a poser because here I am standing in front of this group of students saying, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker," and I had stopped. I'd finished my documentary when it was another 5 years before I made anything, and so you're just like, it was really great for me.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you think those films did prepare you on like a technical level, just in terms of directing? Was there things, do you feel like it's easy to take that short and just expand it out into a feature? And that's going to be kind of our next segment is talking about exactly that, turning it into Faith.
I mean, I had the script for Faith before I did any of the shorts. So none of those things are used to sort of inspire the feature. But like, every time I do it, like you're learning something. You're learning something about using the camera. You're learning something about working with actors. You're learning something about collaborating with crew or how you want to use music or the way you want to move or not move the camera or whatever it is. And so just that act of making and learning is incredibly valuable. Sometimes I think that, there's this, I find this calling card, this phrase of a calling card really sort of, toxic is the wrong word, but harmful, I think, for so many young filmmakers because they think that they need to make their short and it's got to explode onto the scene to allow them to do the next big thing, which never happens. I mean, I know somebody's going to, well, it happened to this person. Yeah, 1 in a million. Like, it's like trying to bank your whole thing on winning the lottery when it really is about the process of, because filmmaking is incredibly difficult. It's an incredibly difficult endeavor to try to harness this idea that's just something that's happening in your head and it's on paper into a physical reality that you're then going to record and to be able to marshal everything that you need from the crew, the camera, working with the actors. And it's incredibly difficult. And so this idea that you're supposed to move, like that conversation I was having with a peer when I was an undergrad, you're supposed to move from these small little student films that have they have pressure, but they're such small things, to then all of a sudden this large apparatus, this large canvas of a feature film where there's so many people and so many things and so much equipment. You need to do a lot of it and practice and get better at it. It's 3 days. If it's a short and it's 3 days, 3 10-hour days, you will learn a hell of a lot doing those 3 10-hour days with a crew that will be incredibly valuable to you no matter what happens with the film. Now, of course, you're going to try to make the best short film that you possibly can. You want it to create some sort of knowledge of you as a maker, of some sort of value for you. But the first thing is you just got to learn how to do the thing. You know what I mean? And you've got to get better at doing the thing, because there's nothing natural about it. There's absolutely nothing natural about you write a scene and you think it's supposed to be real or authentic or human or whatever. And then when you're actually doing it, there's lights, there's a camera, there's all these people standing around, and these two actors have to sort of expose themselves to be natural or authentic. There's nothing natural about that. And so to learn how to create that environment, you have to be able to, you have to do the process. And doing it in a short, it's so much less, there's so much less on the line, I guess, because when it's a feature and it's so expensive and there's money and there's all these expectations, it's just so different.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dig into your latest film, the feature film Faith. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or log line. What is this film all about?
So it's about a guy who's deeply religious. He's an evangelical Christian, and something tragic happens, and that's sort of sets off a kind of existential crisis.
Okay. Would you consider this film faith-based? Like, are you taking it to that faith-based market?
No, now the distributor, they kind of wanted to feel like that, but it's not a faith-based film.
Okay.
Because the film is too ambiguous.
Gotcha.
Faith-based films are very, very clear about their intention, and what the answer to the character's problems is very clear. Whereas here, it's much more open.
Gotcha. Where did this idea come from? What was the genesis of this story?
It's just because of my background. I mean, I grew up an evangelical Christian,
Hmm.
and I have sort of drifted away from that as a central tenet of my identity, I guess. And so, because of that, I'm naturally interested in what happens when someone's perspective shifts. Now, for me, it's been a much more gradual thing, certainly. So, but for to make a script, to write a script, you need a device. And so I created a kind of plot device for a character who's going to go through that shift, but it's going to be much more abrupt than it was in my own personal life.
Gotcha. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit, and we can talk specifically about faith. Where do you typically write, and when do you typically write? Are you that guy that goes to Starbucks? You need that ambient noise? Do you have a home office? Do you write in the middle of the night? Are you a morning person? How does your writing schedule typically go?
I write when I can find time.
Gotcha. Good answer.
I've got the teaching. I have two children, and so writing is a thing where, number one, you have to have something that you are trying to write. There's something that's you sort of feel compelled to do. But then number two, it also becomes a kind of respite against everyday life. Like it's not answering emails for my job. It's not doing parenting things or whatever. So it can be in the morning. It can be at night. Occasionally, pre-COVID, I'll take a couple days. My wife is kind enough to let me take a couple days, and I might drive up the coast and just rent an Airbnb and sit and write for this. I have a script now that I'm trying to. My producers and I are trying to get made, and so I did that in February of 2020. I had a draft of a script and I needed to rewrite, and so I just escaped for a couple days and did a rewrite on it. Stuff like that. But it's just literally finding the time to be able to do it.
No, I hear you. So, how much time do you spend doing the outline, index cards, that sort of thing, versus how much time are you actually in final draft, cranking out dialogue and scene description?
It's a really good question. There's definitely more time spent on the pre-writing than the actual screenplay writing. It's not like a set. Like I'm not. I do outlines. I kind of do it backwards. I mean, I will fill up a notebook with notes. I have an idea for something, and I will fill up a notebook with notes, and then I will actually write the script, a horrible draft of a script, and then I will go back and outline it, and then write another draft of the script. So then it becomes more structured. The reason I do it that way is because what I found for me, I'm less interested in the mechanics of plot and way more interested in the way character creates circumstances for a story. And so I'm trying to maneuver through what's happening with the characters. And I tried to do, when I was first starting out, I tried to do the whole index card, scene to scene sort of thing. And what I found for me is that plot was driving I was trying to come up with these things that are happening to the characters rather than letting the circumstances of what the character's in drive the story. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I'd be curious, since you're also a teacher, do you teach a screenwriting class, and how do you teach something like that? I mean, that's always one of the big divides. And certainly I've noticed in myself, is some people come to you and they're much better with character. Some people come to you, they're much better with story. And how do you teach it to your students?
I don't. I'm not a big fan of screenwriting classes. We have screenwriting classes, but I was never a big fan of them as a student, because I think the key to learning how to write is to write. And screenwriting classes are good for that. They are good for that. They compel someone, like, you have to write because there is an assignment. You have 5 pages due next week or whatever it is. But in terms of how to approach structure, I don't know if I can teach that. Like, I talk more about tone and point of view than anything else. I talk about, like, how are you carrying the tone from one scene to the next? What is your perspective on this story? How are we supposed to look? What lens are we looking at this story through, rather than well, this story beat happens and then this story beat happens and that's got to connect to this story beat, because it feels way too much like math to me. And I know lots of really interesting films have been written that way, so I don't want to just completely disparage it, but it just for the way my mind works, and this is the problem with the students taking my class and wanting to learn screenplay mechanics because I'm terrible at it. The way the connective tissue for scene to scene in a movie for me is tonality. It's emotional state. It's that sort of stuff. And how consistent is that? And where is it changing? Where are we seeing the character shift in perspective? All that sort of stuff. And that's kind of the way I'm teaching it, rather than, again, rising action, falling action, all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha. Let's talk about your development process a little bit. And we can talk specifically about Faith. So you've written a draft of this. What did you start to do to get that out there and get notes? Do you have a bunch of trusted filmmaker friends that you sent it to and got notes? And it sounds like you wrote this quite some time ago, so you've probably been rewriting it for years. But maybe talk about that process. Once you had that first draft that you were kind of comfortable with, what did your development process look like? Who did you give it to, and who did you get notes from, and how did it continue to evolve?
Well, that's a good question. I can't even. It's so long ago, I can't remember. I can talk more about the script that I have now, and just because it's so fresh. There's three or four people that I'll give it to, but we've made stuff together now. Like, it's a process. Then, there's one or two people probably that I gave it to. But what I did is then I started looking for a producer, because I knew that for Faith, well, for any feature, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this by myself. And I looked for people that I'm interested in, for lack of a better term, American art cinema. I get it's indie cinema, but it's art cinema. And I looked for producers who had produced stuff that I really liked in the past 10 years, and they were making it for less than $2 million. Now, I would honestly, if I was doing that now, I'd be looking for people who were making stuff for less than $500,000, quite honestly. But this was 10 years ago.
Sure.
And so I sent it to producers who sort of fit that model. And I found this guy, Mike Ryan, out in New York, who had produced a couple of Kelly Reichardt's films, Old Joy and Meek's Cut Off, and he produced the movie Junebug with Amy Adams, and a few other things that I really, really liked, and I felt like it was right in the same sort of, again, tone. I'm going to say that word over and over again, nuts, of what I was trying to do, and he responded to the script, and off we went. But then it was rewrites. Then it's working with a producer and him going, well, if I'm going to raise money, we've got to do this, and we need to think about that, and that sort of stuff. And so then it's that process, and then it's the long process of then trying to attach cast and find money for it.
So I'm curious. So it sounds like you were just doing cold query letters to these producers. And where did you get that information? It was like IMDb Pro. You just drilling down.
I opened up an IMDb Pro account and said, okay, who are these people? And so I mean, for the most part, you're getting ignored. For the you go into an email inbox and are quickly deleted. Which now, when you're first starting out, like that feels brutal. But now I completely understand it, because I'll get people are doing the same thing to me. Like, I'm going to produce their movie. I'm not going to.
Now you're listed. Yeah, you're listed on IMDb as a producer, so you're getting the same emails.
So now I completely understand it. And then there's people who are very nice and say, no, not for us, and that sort of thing. And but there's no one person who is going to ultimately be your the arbiter of your success. I mean, like, you're going to be the one, if you really want to make this thing, you're going to keep spinning your wheels and trying to do it. You also got to, like, I wasn't sending it, and this is not, I'm not putting these people who make these kinds of films down, but I wasn't sending it to people who are making low budget horror films or stuff like that. Like, you're trying to find the right fit. That's the other big part of it. Like, you look for people who are in your zone, for lack of a better term, and if you have something that interests them, then you might find that the right relationship, and that's the way it's. I found Mike, and we're going to go off and try to do this again. So.
Gotcha. And I'm curious if you have any recollection, just to get a sense of the scope. You mentioned sometimes you send these emails that you don't get any response. How many of these emails do you think you ultimately sent out?
Good God. At the time, it felt like hundreds, but it wasn't. I know it because there's just not, quite honestly, one of the things you find out is there's just not that many. The film world, it feels like sometimes when you're starting out that it's vast. It's really not. Like, there's a smaller number of people doing this than you realize. So I don't know. It was probably less than 50, somewhere in the 25 to 50 range, I would say.
And then what were some of the notes that he gave you, that the producer gave you? Just like, what did that look like?
The original story, which our friend, so one of the people, our mutual friend Eric, he would have been one of the ones to read the original script. The original story was not focused on one character. It was focused on two characters going through different sort of religious or personal crises. And he said, we got to simplify this. We need to make this into a single character who's going through this. Because his whole thing is he makes these kind of artful dramas, and he makes them cheaply, and or cheaply in movie world anyway. And he's able to attract relatively well-known actors for no money. But one of the main ways that you can do that is that, like, they're the center of the movie. Like, they're going to get a chance, like, if they're on a bigger movie or a bigger TV show, they don't get to be the center necessarily. They're one of the supporting players or whatever. But here, for this small movie, they're going to be they're going to drive it. And that's attractive to them because the money's not attractive at all.
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about the casting. I mean, you had a great cast for this. How did you get Brian Geraghty to come on? And I noticed he was also an executive producer. And what does that exactly mean?
Well, that's a good question. So Brian, we actually had a casting director, and he helped us find actually a couple of different actors who were attached for a long time. I mean, again, the process of doing this, we had another actor attached as the lead for probably almost a full year. And the movie, we thought we were going to go, and then it get pushed, and we thought we were going to go, and then it get pushed, and we thought we were going to go, and then we get pushed. And then eventually he got a job that when we finally knew we were going to go, it was definitely happening. He couldn't do it because he had this other job. And so then we got Brian because Nora Jane, who plays his wife, who the casting director helped us get, her husband, Chris Marquette, who's an actor, and the two of them, Chris and Brian are friends. And he said, he'd be really good for that part. And I said, yes, he's fantastic. He would be good in this part. And so we sent him the script, and he liked it. And so off we went. And so then him being executive producer, I honestly don't remember how that. I mean, that's a deal negotiating thing that his agents and Mike, the producer, that I tried to stay out of, quite honestly. So, but it was part of the deal.
Gotcha. And so, what's next for you? What do you keep mentioning the script that you're just finishing up? How is that, and what is that looking like?
I wrote, again, this. I don't know how it works for you, Ashley, but I mean, I write these things. I wrote the first draft of this like 5 years ago. And then it's sat somewhere while I'm making Faith, and then I've returned to it and written a couple more drafts, and now I've sent it out to collaborators, and the producers, they both really like it, and Sherry is my other producer, and so we want to go off and make it. And so now I'm going to do yet another draft, and then we'll start sending it around and see if we can't get some interest and find some money and all that sort of stuff. But it's one of these things. I mean, I think, Eric told me you seem to always be making something for, I'm sort of resigned to the fact that these things are, after going through with Faith, okay, if it happens next year, fantastic, but I'm not betting on it. It might be, this is going to be a few year process. of trying to get it made, and it's completely different than Faith. It's a crime film, for lack of a better term, I guess, crime/gangster film that kind of messes. I want to undercut the genre a little bit with a love story, and so yeah, that's what I'm working on, and hopefully I'll be able to do it in a couple of years.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think listening to you, I think my approach is definitely different than your own approach. Like you mentioned that you carefully selected 25 or 50 producers. Like I just downloaded all of IMDb Pro and blast to everybody. That's more of my things. And I'm just getting these scripts out. And I can tell too, you're a lot more emotionally invested in these scripts. I churn out scripts very quickly. And frankly, if they sit on my shelf or they get destroyed, I don't really get that invested on any one script. It doesn't seem like, and I'm not saying it's bad or good.
Right.
Oftentimes I look at people like yourself and I envy that sort of passion and commitment to the one project. And, sometimes I have filmmakers on that are exactly like this. And so I really believe that it's more about figuring out your own sort of personality and how you go than it is any one sort of prescription.
Absolutely.
For like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. It's really a personal thing of how you're going to interact in these particular contexts or whatever.
Absolutely, because ultimately it's going to be you. The energy has to come from you. The want has to come from you. And like I sometimes I think I treat these things way too preciously, and that's to my own detriment. Like just be able to put it out and let it go, I think would be probably a lot healthier. Because one of the things that does happen is you do live and die with every email. You send that email out and fingers crossed they're going to say, oh, they said no. Oh, God, I got to drink myself into oblivion tonight to be able to get it. You know what I mean? Whereas if it wasn't so precious, then whatever. It's fine. I'll do another one.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is that I do think I get stuff out there sometimes a little bit before I should. That's right. The downside to what I do is sometimes I feel like I'm moving a little too quickly and I don't always necessarily polish things up maybe as much as I should. So it's, again, there's advantages to both, I think. I'd like to end these interviews just by asking the guests what they've seen recently. Is there anything that's kind of maybe a little off the radar, Hulu, Netflix, HBO, that you've seen that you think would be really instructive for screenwriters?
Oh boy, I don't know about you. You have kids?
Yeah, I do actually. I got 10. Yeah,
it's so hard to find time to actually watch anything.
Yeah.
What is the last thing that I've seen that I was? I can't think of anything in the last. I mean, I really like David Simon's The Plot Against America, the series that he did on HBO. Because that just made me think. I was thinking of because a couple years ago. Paul Dano and Zoe Kazan did this movie called Wildlife. I don't know if you saw it. It's based upon a book with Jake Gyllenhaal and oh God, what is her name? Whatever her name is, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm terrible. But it is so beautifully written and constructed, and I found it to be so sort of inspiring just as a writer because of its. I think one of the hardest thing for me. Trying to find a way to get subtext, not having your characters speak subtext, to have your movie be about something, this current that's underneath everything, to have it be about that without explicitly, stamping it on the front of the screen that this movie is about these things. And they just did such a beautiful job in the way it's constructed. It's very much. I'm interested in. American culture, the American identity, how the American identity is formed. No matter what, whether it's the faith or this new sort of crime film that I've written, they're still sort of about that. And that movie, I thought they did such a beautiful job of sort of getting at certain questions about the American family and the pressures of sort of existing and it's set in like 1950 whatever in Colorado, I believe. The sort of unspoken pressure of the nuclear family unit that I just thought was just really well done without saying that, without uttering, well, we're under so much pressure, just like making it so plain and so obvious. And just really beautifully performed by the actors.
Gotcha. And you said it was called Wilderness?
Wildlife. It's Jake Gyllenhaal and
We'll be able to find it. Yeah, no worries. We'll be able to find it with Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, and the title. So that's all good. How can people see Faith? Do you know what the release schedule is like, and where is that available?
So it's out. It's on all of your favorite VOD platforms: Amazon, iTunes, Apple TV, Fandango, all that sort of stuff. It's there. Spectrum, all that stuff.
Perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up for the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
It's not a very exciting feed or anything like that, but yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, we'll put your Twitter link in the show notes. Well, Eli, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. Good luck with this film and good luck with your next film. Hopefully you can come back on and tell us about that one as well once it's done.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate it.
So perfect. We'll talk to you later, Eli.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer Bob McCullough. He's written and even created a number of TV shows. He also runs the Wiki Screenplay Contest, which is a monthly screenplay writing competition. We talk through some of his career highlights and how he broke into the business, and of course talk about his contest as well. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's our show. Thank you for listening.